I would love to first hear your both introductions. So yeah, take away Mike Francesco and introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Francesco, developer advocate at Daily Dev, long-term Docker fanatic, way before get starting on YouTube, way before starting on Twitter, way before getting a job in tech. So we can say that finally I'm here in this space, but it has been a very long journey, and it's great. Yes, if you want to brag, I also won a prize at the DockerCon about as the most consistent Docker content creator. So that's it. That's me, and I'm glad to be here and meet also Mohammed. We didn't meet at DockerCon. It's all your fault. Please go along.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't make it. I'm still waiting on my visa, and perhaps on next year's DockerCon, it's approved, we can meet there. Yeah, my name is Mohammed Ali. I'm a backend engineer mostly, and I'm a Docker fan since it's very early days when it was 2 years old. Back in the day, I was uh, a Python developer, and I was creating CI/CD jobs for one of my projects, and then I discovered Docker back in the day. So yeah, I'm a fan since then. It has been 8 years now, I guess, and yeah, I'm also creating content on these things that I like, basically.
That is amazing. And one thing I find common in both of you that you are both are awesome content creators. So Finches of course create awesome videos and blogs, and you too, Mohammed, create awesome blogs. So yeah, do check out their profiles and blogs and YouTube everything. So yeah, I think this is a very common question, but I am twisting this question in this way. So in 2024, why Docker is still relevant to learn? Because I get this question a lot, like why anyone should learn Docker. So I twisted this question in this way, like in 2024, why still relevant to learn Docker? So yeah.
Yes, I'll try to give a polite answer and don't be too emotional. Let's try to give let's say an objective answer. Okay, Mohammed. So I make this promise. I'll try to just hold myself back. I'm sitting, so I'm just not gonna shout. So Docker is great because it's a platform that it's agnostic from many technologies. Not all the technologies, but let's say most of them. So the thing is that when we are developers, we don't know about the future. I don't know how many people would have bet in 2021 that we would have had something like ChatGPT 1 year later, because it's hard to predict. That's true. Again, we made many spaces, many live streams. What's going to happen in 2024? I'm also guilty on this kind of spaces because I want to know. The thing is that we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen, what is going to be released. There can be a new programming language urging, example Rust or Go. And so having, I don't know, Docker as my safe corner, that it's a technology that can we say that Docker is old without not offending anyone? But I say this in a great sense, that like it's a technology that after 11 years it's still relevant. So it's something. And I want to add something. I think that now this is something that I said last year, 2 years ago. It's probably the best moment to learn a Docker because maybe in 5 years it will become so under the hood that people will just use it, but we'll use it just under the hood. So probably now understanding how things work, I don't know, it's similar, I don't know, to Linux commands or something that maybe works under the hood, but we don't know. So understanding, it's similar, I don't know, to understanding Git before GitHub was a thing. So now, who already knew Git when GitHub was out had absolutely an idea of what GitHub was. And then, of course, now there might be a confusion. So absolutely worth learning. And I would say that there are two ways of learning Docker. One is if you want to become a DevOps expert. So in that case, you need to understand all the different technologies, or you can even just understand Docker for your single technology. You can even just understand just how to Dockerize Node.js applications because you want to focus maybe only on Node backend or maybe only on Django development. So I would suggest to run Docker in 2024, and probably I'll do the same in 2025. So for 3-4 more years for sure.
Love your take on this. Yeah, Mohammed, you can go ahead and share your thoughts on this. And
Yeah, I'm going to just repeat the things that Francesco said. Yeah, basically, Docker makes you ship your machine. Basically, if something works on your machine, then you can ship it as it's working on your machine. So that's why it's still relevant, and it's going to be relevant for the coming years. So I think that's even more important now, because a lot of things are uh, getting built on top of Docker, and for example Kubernetes and all sorts of things. So, and now it's also uh, supporting things like Gen AI and stuff like that. So if you want to, for example, have your own model and play around with the new technologies, you can just download the Docker Compose file and just run it, and then you don't have to worry about where these things are coming from, how to set up the databases and stuff like that. So I think that's something that makes life for developers much easier, especially if you want to create a new project, if you want to test it and stuff like that.
So thank you for the answer. I think people got the gist why Docker is still relevant in 2024. I think many people already knew the answer, but I think you people already all cleared in a much better way. So of course we talk about why it is relevant, but the next question will be like, what should be a right approach? Like, what should be right approach to learn Docker in a better way? Like this is also one of the most asked question, because people has always doubt, because they say, okay, I am learning Docker, but I am not able to understand many concept. I am not able to grasp many concept, because we know in Docker ecosystem there are lots of things, commands, compose, and everything. We will talk, of course, talk in the later point of time. But yeah, what should be your go-to right approach if you are starting today, like with the Docker? So yeah, go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, I can go first on this. I would say uh, I would, if I want to Docker, I want to learn Docker or new. I would cover the basics, know what how the CLI is working, and then after I have a bit of grasp on how the concepts are, how things work, and I would start building a Dockerfile for my own project, which is, for example, a Python project or Node.js. And then after I got to know how to build a Dockerfile, then I would use Docker init to see what are the best practices on doing that. So I think it's a three-step thing. So first of all, know what Docker is in general, and then how to build a Docker file for my own project. And then the third step is to learn from the best practices. And I would say a good place to start is Docker init. So if you use Docker init, it would create a Docker file for your own project, and then you can look into it and see how Docker does it. So that would be very educational, I would say.
I really love the point, like about the Docker in it. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for your answer. And anything would you like to add, Francesco?
Yes, of course. I'm biased, of course. So go on my profile, check the pin tweet. If you have when we have 57 minutes, and then you let me know if that was worth or not, because it's not like a full-fledged Crocker crash course or of like 20 hours course. But I think in 1 hour I go like from really zero. So that's really, it's not like level 1, it's level 0. So if you just understand, if you just know what an API is, what a backend is, what a frontend is, I can really guide you through the basic steps. So I'm sorry, Pradumna, for the shameless plug, but I got many good feedback about that. It's very beginner friendly. It's basically a video of me recorded during a live stream. So it's very natural. It's not artificial, but it's a good discussion and a way that you can use. I mean, of course, there are great courses, even paid courses, but I think that understanding, as Mohammed said, like the core ideas, because the difference between an image and container, please understand the basics and the differences. Otherwise, you will never, you always say, okay, the Compose app works, but you really don't know what's going on. So understanding what happens when you do Docker run Nginx, what happens when you checking the networks, understanding the objects, understanding the components, I would say, the pieces. It's like understanding the pieces of an engine. It is also a pun word, because also there is something called Docker engine. So I think that if you spend 57 minutes on this, you will save so much time later, because it's the same as doing like math exercises without checking the theory. You can do it, of course. The first thing, which is just a little bit different, you don't know what you can do. So then you have to go, then you are stuck 20 minutes, then you have to go back to the theory, you need to find the right place and say, okay, is this one? But you already lost like 45 minutes. So try to check 1 or 2 introductory course. And then, of course, there are processes. I think I made even a Twitter thread, like the path to learn Docker, without even mentioning specific resources, just about the concepts. I don't know, probably you can find it if you tag me space how to learn Docker, something like that. So I'm a fan of like showcasing like just the how, because of course there is already many resources. Don't underestimate the docs, because the Docker docs are really amazing. I also have a call in 2 hours, because I'm also getting into the group of people taking care of the Docker docs. So expect some typos on the Docker docs. No, I'm joking. So Docker docs are really great as a reference. And of course, there are amazing content creators creating content about Docker. I want to be friends with all of them. And that's it. And of course, the best of luck. In case of DevOps, understanding the concepts, it's crucial, because I mean, maybe I want to say something unpopular. Are we recording? Okay. You can even, maybe you can try, I don't know, to do, I don't know, an XJS application just without becoming a React expert, because you just want to, you know, skip the steps, because you just want to try things. With the DevOps, I would never recommend this. Understanding the concept is more important than like making a lot of practice at the beginning. And then, of course, understanding the practice, it's important, but please understand what happened when you run the command. So then you are basically free to do this whatever you want. I'm stressing this point so much because I want to be useful for people here in the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it's not a shameless plug, because I was one of the first person who checked out this video, and I can't recommend enough. So for sure. And yeah, so thank you for the answer. And once again, I think Francesco already touched upon this. I just want to emphasize this question again. So I am favor of this thing, but yeah. So there's also one thing, like when we say DevOps, so it sounds like, okay, Docker is a very DevOps centric tool. So in my question is like, is if anyone just a developer, just basic developer, he does not care about DevOps or anything, is Docker still good to learn? And is a Docker only DevOps centric tool? So yeah, this is the question. Like, if like I see lots of developer in the our audience, so might be they are interested in learning Docker, but they are still not very sure it is good for them, because as the what to say, the marketing or anything you can see, it's more like a DevOps centric tool. But yeah, so I just want to want your both perspective on this. Yeah, go ahead, Francesco.
Yeah, sure. So I repeat what I said before. There are basically 2 ways to learn DevOps and Docker. Doing DevOps just for your stack, or let's say go into the rabbit hole. So I want to say there are these two levels, and both of them are fine, by the way. We can still be friends. So when I would say I would not start my developer career just by learning Docker, because to containerize something, you need something that I suggest that you build on your own. I don't know, maybe a Node CLI tool, or a Node web server with a couple of APIs, or I don't know, a Java, a Spring Boot application. So I would suggest not to start with Docker, because Docker is like the package. It's like, I don't know, buying the wrapper before buying the gift. So I will do these things in order. So for the containerization, I will wait that I have an app to containerize, my app to containerize, or at least understanding this concept. And I think that the effort it's really worth, especially if you do this on your application. And then if you want, if you like, because some people like DevOps, some people hate DevOps, because maybe, I don't know, they found a efficient way to develop things without, they don't need it. I don't know. I don't blame them. Like, I don't I don't get super excited, for example, when I style a website. Probably it's my fault. And it's probably one of the reasons why I got so in deep into DevOps, but those are rumors. So it's okay to don't like something in development. I think it's great. So you can focus on something else. But for example, even for me, I don't want to depend 100% when I need to design a website. I know the core concept and basics of CSS. I also made an exam at the university, but I made not the core concept on CSS. I know how to use Tailwind. Maybe I don't know all the Tailwind classes, but I know that there is a reference about Tailwind. So I'm speaking about something, for example, that I'm not super familiar with, but I can still make tutorials and understand stuff. So the same, even if you don't like DevOps, I think that there are so many grades of DevOps, and I think that, for example, I'm very focused on these people, or like they don't want to go like super deep into service mesh, Kubernetes clusters, Ansible, all these cool tools, but maybe they don't want to depend by someone even for basic questions, even to write a Docker file, because it's not that complicated, trust me. Maybe writing an efficient, production-ready Docker file is another story, but understanding the basics, being able to understand the process of containerization, or I don't know, maybe maybe your service will have as an interface something which is running in a container. Are you going to just pay contractors just because you don't want to watch a 30 minutes video? I mean, you're welcome, but I think this is I think this is a bit extreme solution. So this is how I see it.
Love the way you put it, and I think it's very clear from your points. And yeah, go ahead, Mohammed, and would love to hear your thoughts as well. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a few comments. Yes, totally agree with Francesco. I just want to say I was never a DevOps engineer in my career, and I have almost always used Docker in my development setup. Not that I liked it; it was the standard setup there. So if we wanted to run the tests, it was running on Docker using Docker Compose because it's easier than setting up the database in your local machine. Uh, yeah, the CI/CD pipelines were all written in Docker, and many things like the I think especially now Docker's policy is to uh, aid the developers, the engineers to have a better life and do things more smoothly. And so I would say it even if you're not doing DevOps stuff, uh, most probably your setup will have some Docker in it, and knowing how things work is kind of crucial. But yeah, as Francesco said, yeah, it's more crucial to know how to code first before learning Docker.
My next question is, like, I think Francesco has already touched upon this. Like, what are the resources you use to, like, when you're learning Docker? Of course, we talk about what is the right approach. Like, what are the good resources? Like, for sure, I will shamelessly plug the Francesco's YouTube channel. But apart from that, if anyone want to learn Docker, what are the good resources to get started? And good to hear, like, what resources you both used at your time to get started with the Docker, or started learning Docker. So yeah.
Yes, I can start. The answer is many, of course. And I will start with Docker documentation. The amazing Brett Fisher Udemy course. I think it's still there. I mean, it was there in 2016, and a mind-blowing course. And probably the $15 best spent of my life. So absolutely recommended. I also met him in person, an amazing person. What else? Nana in Tech, all shameless plug, but this is not sponsored. What else? Kunal Kushwas has great content. I mean, there are many, but I think that with this I think you already can go really quite far, I would say. And I will stop here because then, of course, there are production ready things. Maybe you need to just get your own personal experience, but I think those are all great ways. There are so many Docker crash courses on YouTube. Mine is not the only one, and mine, as I said, is just basically me just speaking. So it depends on your style, but I think there are many, and I think the concepts are not that many. We can even try to do this like in the next space. We can maybe you can even do it this, but I see Docker similar. I don't want to say similar to Math, otherwise people will just run away. But in similar to like understanding 5 concepts and just apply those 5 concepts. Really, it's really that thing. But without those 5, I don't know now how many they are, you will struggle so much understanding even the basic communication, the basic like how can I don't know read from a local file inside a container. So it's really like that. So understanding the I don't know. Probably at some point I'll say like okay, these are like the X number of Docker things that you really need to know. I'll probably never make a video with this title, or maybe yes, but that's really the thing. So there are not so many things, but that's very important to understand. I think that with what I say, that you are set at least for January or February. So we can make another space in March.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, Mohammed, take away the mic.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer this, because when I learned Docker, it was really the early days. These great contents were not there, and I had to learn it the hard way by trial and error and looking into the documentation. And by the way, Docker has a very great documentation on the website and on the Docker's blog. So I would say that that's really awesome, but also really hard to read, because if you're starting things and you don't want to know everything inside out, then it's maybe a bit hard to follow everything there. So yeah, so I would say Francesco's answer should be more relevant, because yeah, so when I learned it, these things were not there at the time.
I forgot something, Pradumna. Can I add something? Just
For
one
sure,
last
for sure.
report. So there is an amazing GitHub repository. It's like I think it's called like DevOps with Pradumna or something like that. Just Google it, you will find it. I think that's a great resource.
Thank you for the plug. Yeah, let's move ahead to the next question. Yeah, this is a question from my side, to be honest. Like, there's always a common question, like when people started getting into the DevOps ecosystem, there's a question, okay, what tool should I learn? That is a different theory, but when I should learn Docker, like.
Okay, so I would say Bash script, a very basic understanding, because you're going to write some Bash inside Docker files, and a basic understanding of how Linux file system works. If you're not used to it, when I was using Docker for the first time, I was already using Linux for some years, so I knew how things work, what are the access control uh, things on Linux file system, how should you install things, packages on Linux machines, because Docker is based on the Linux kernel, and you're going to do a lot of Linux stuff inside Docker. So I would say Linux is the most important thing to know if you're not used to it, and basically a bit of Bash scripting, because then you're going to do that. Apart from that, I think that's it. And then your own stuff, like how things work in your side of industry, how Python works if you're writing Python, how should you install Python packages and stuff like that. So basically some Linux and the parts that you work on, basically. If you're using Node.js, how npm works. If you're using Python, how to manage packages on Python. And I would say these are the prerequisites for learning Docker, basically.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mohammed. Yeah, 100% agree with the languages thing. Like, if you have packages, go for the like different packages. Like, of course. So yeah, take away the mic, Francisco. Yeah.
Yes, of course. So I agree with Mohammed. I think what you can also try to understand a bit before diving deep into Docker is what is called make files, which is basically like a procedure of commands. So you understand also how Docker works. And apart from that, I think you are almost there. probably what could really help you is like probably because this is what I did, like writing a procedure. I don't know which are the steps that you need to do in order, I don't know, to run your Node.js application. Like write them like in a notepad. So like understanding the procedure step by step, and then you'll see how similar to this is when you, for example, you write your first Docker file. So you probably clone the repository, then you just run npm install, then you run node index.js. So write this procedure, because this is exactly what you will do when you will create your first Docker file. Docker file is not black sorcery. It's basically just letting you to basically write a set of commands to understand. So probably having this procedure on the side can really help you when you start getting started. That again, Docker is not black sorcery or blue sorcery, but it's more about automating something that you might do even without. And I think this is one of the strong points. It's not a mandatory technology, but this is what makes it so fascinating. You can still do your own things. It doesn't like get let's say over all your files and all your stuff. You can still deploy things with just in the normal way, and you have this plus this file on the side. And I think this is one of the things that makes me more excited, that it's something you might use, and but still the default stuff more or less everything works, apart from maybe you need to configure probably, I don't know, maybe a database URL. But apart from that, you can still have you can even use it without. So it's not like something that once you click, like you accept the the Docker let's say acknowledgement, all your system will be destroyed. It's something that you can use it or even don't use it. So it's I think this is the best thing.
Thank you for sharing that, Francesca. And yeah, I agree. This is I think, one of the most mind-blowing thing about Docker. Like, even though you have it, like, it's not mandatory. It's not in the what to say, the dependencies or packages. No, it's just a side thing. If you use it, that is good. If you not use it, doesn't make any difference. So yeah, with the performance of the app or usability of the app, so for sure. So yeah, so my question is like, okay, I started learning Docker. I have the good resources. I have the prerequisite. So Docker is a huge ecosystem, correct? So what areas anyone should focus? Like, there's a compose, there is a lot of things like the CI/CD and everything. So I am specifically asking about the Docker. Like, if anyone started learning Docker, which areas he or she should focus more? Like learning about the compose, or learning about like different areas. Like, there is a orchestration in Docker, and there's a different services option in Docker. So what areas is really good to learn? Yeah.
It depends. I'm a bit biased, but I'll share what I like the most, and I think you can say this by watching my videos, is the process of creating the image, because I think that this is like the core. It's like really the core thing. So if you are like me and you like, for example, to experiment different technologies, maybe you want to create a bit some Go applications, you don't want to depend on a single language. This is probably a place you can get interested in. And of course, I'm saying this from a personal experience. So for me, it's fascinating. I don't know, even with a technology that I'm not super proficient, I don't know, PHP and Laravel. Like, I think I made a couple of projects in my whole life. But Dockerizing a Laravel application is something challenging, and I made even a video of me doing this. I think it was even live, because this is just about understanding which are the processes, how the Laravel developers they deploy their applications without Docker, and then writing my own Docker file and understanding how it works, because the concepts are the same. After you understand, you see that you just need to fix a couple of things, understanding how you can run the Laravel application, how you set up the environment variables to connect to database, and so on. I think this is one of my favorite parts. You can say this again from all my type of videos, because it's really at the core. Once you have the image, then you can focus on orchestration. You can do something different things. You can use different networks and so on. But I think that's really at the core. And again, this is if you like to use different technologies. Instead, if you, let's say, I made, I don't know, a devil's pact with Node.js. I will always create Node.js applications for my whole life. In that case, you can try, to optimize Node.js Docker file, understanding all the steps, how to become root user, all the, let's say, the design, the patterns and the best way to optimize it. I prefer to understanding how to create at least a development ready image, but for all the technologies. But that's by me. But I think that process is really at the core of the Dockerization. It's the Dockerization of the application itself.
Thank you for the answer, and I completely agree because, of course, if you're not able to Dockerize your application, there is no learning forward. That, of course, you can compose, use orchestration, but the build step is really necessary. So yeah, Mohammed, what's your thoughts on this? Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a few comments. Yes, I would say learning Docker CLI is the first priority. Even if you're using Docker Desktop, the CLI is, I would say, the most important thing to learn. And then after you got a good hang of it, then probably Docker Compose. But I would postpone learning things like Kubernetes and other orchestration tools to the latest possible date. So if you really need them to uh, learn, basically, before that, I think it's getting super confusing if you learn them before you really need them. So I would say, yeah, so the CLI is the most important, and then after some time, the compose. Francesco has something to say about it.
I am a huge fan of the CLI, and I probably say this in every single video. So I don't know, some moments people will call me like, the grandpa of Docker. I had an unfair advantage because before, like some years ago, and now until I started to talk as a veteran, there was not Docker Desktop for Linux, and I was coding on a Linux machine at job. So it was the only way to interact with Docker. It was with the Docker CLI, so I had no choice. Now, Mohammed, these new Gen Z generations, they have Linux on as a Docker desktop on Linux. But apart from that, I think that understanding the CLI, it's crucial. I make my tutorials with the CLI, but nobody ever complained because you can always use the UI if you want. But I think at understanding the commands, it's, for me, it's faster, and it's also, you don't have to switch context every time you make. I don't know, maybe you want to check the containers, you don't want to switch context every 10 seconds. So I prefer to just maybe make a couple of typos, but at least I am always in the same environment. I don't know, call me old, but that's what I like.
No, I don't think so. I too agree with that because I am also CLI biased because, of course, I think you get more grip like whenever you perform things with the CLI, and I think CLI also helps you understand things a lot better. For example, even though VS Code has extension for Git or committing or pushing to the code, but I think it's really important to get really good hands on how the actual Git works instead of just using the UI because what about if you are using in the future you want to automate that thing? Only the commands are possible in the CI and in the CD. There is only one way to go, commands. There is no UI there. So I think if you have learned the basics, if you learn the commands, it will be super easy to automate, to be honest, because at the end you have to use a CLI and this kind of tooling to automate those things. So yeah, thank you, Francesco and Mohammed, for adding that. We are left with just a couple of questions. So the last second question will be, so if you notice, like there are lots of good announcements in the Docker ecosystem recently in the DockerCon as well as some before DockerCon. So there was Init, there was Docker Scout, Docker AI, and of course Docker extensions as well. So which of this announcement you are really looking forward? Like,
Yeah, so I would say, as I'm into security, I'm really excited for Docker Scout, especially because it's kind of modularizing the whole supply chain security by basically making it uh, basically a multi-step process, and then you can choose what tool you want to use for each one of these steps. For example, if you want to check the vulnerabilities in your Docker images, you first extract a thing called SBOM, which is basically a list of all the packages installed in your Docker file. And then the next step is to attach it to your Docker image, and then you can, at a later stage, check these SBOMs that are attached to the Docker images, and then you can generate the SBOM with whatever tool you like. Docker Scout has I think it's either Docker Build or Docker Scout that allows you to do that. I don't remember, but I tweeted about it. I will find it later. And then also when you attach the SBOM to your Docker image, then you can proactively check it if there is a new vulnerability introduced or discovered. Then you already know which dependencies your Docker image has, and then you can check these databases against each other and see if your Docker images are vulnerable, and then do something about it. So Docker Scout is something that I'm really excited about. And the other thing is Docker Init, because it basically gives you a best practice Docker file that you can compare your other Docker files to, and then you can learn from it and see, okay, if this is how Docker writes Docker files, then maybe I can take one or two things from it and adapt it to my other Docker files that I have written. So I think these tools are the two things that I'm really excited about. About the AI, I think that's something that is very hyped. I'm not really much into it, but I think that's also something that makes the AI stack more accessible to the not very pro developers. So I think that's also something interesting. But yeah, maybe Francesco knows more about it.
Okay. So I tried the Docker AI, and I think it's very good. I think it's the last time that I tried, it was still in beta, but it's very promising. But you should try. I think that basically it gives you a set of tools in VS Code, basically with just actions. You just click, like a GitHub Copilot. Like if you give it a bit of power, it will literally write some parts of some Docker files, create the files, and then do something. So it seems like magic. So that Docker Init, I also made a presentation about Docker Init. Huge fan. I think I made a Docker Init when Docker Init was being released, I think in like 20 minutes on my PC, and it's one of the most viewed videos on my channel because Docker embedded this on their website. So I probably the most watched Docker Init video on the web, made it, of course, in 20 minutes. And I like what you say. The Docker Init helps you to write Docker files, but don't get mad at me, Docker, please. It will not solve 100% your problems. Sometimes you still need to figure out something. Maybe your application will still need to do something. And I repeat, this is why I say that it's important to understand containerization now in 2024 and 2025, because many things will be automated. The Docker Init will become more and more powerful. But if you don't understand the basics of the Dockerization, you will have a good Docker init, it will work, then you change one little thing. Docker init doesn't work because, of course, it can't cover all the cases. It can cover 60%, 50% of the cases, but it can never cover everything. In that case, your knowledge of the tool will be crucial, because you understand, okay, I don't know, I have to open another port, I don't know, in the Docker file, or just set an extra argument. But this will be clear if you already know what to do. This is why I say learn the basics into now, because probably in 5 years you will have even more advanced Docker init, and this will be a powerful tool in the hands of someone who knows how to write them. Also, huge fan of Docker Scout. I am on my to-do list create a video about Docker Scout. And the last thing, I'm a huge fan of the Docker Compose Watch. And I think now there's also something called Docker Compose Include. So new stuff on Docker Compose. I don't know if it was a spoiler or not, but I mean, getting updated on Docker is hard even for me. Like it's really it's not a dead framework at all. It really gets updated every day, every week, if not every day. So that's it, and I'll be happy also, of course, to create more content out of it. I have a huge list of things. I have a video coming out tomorrow about Docker, so it's I think it will be very, very interesting. It's I don't know. I think Docker will be remembered as a tool that I don't know, lasted for very, very long, even if in 100 years, because it's basically changed the way how we deploy software. I think we can all agree on this. Even people who hate DevOps, I think they have to admit that Docker did something when it came out, and it changed the way to how developers they use and they deploy stuff. Of course, there are other alternatives now. We're in 2024. Of course, the software is never going to stop. But I think we all agree that the Docker really changed the way. It's been, I think, a milestone in the development story. Then you can say whatever you want. Don't learn DevOps, make a catchy video with the catchy thumbnail, but this is the harsh truth that it has been crucial. So this is what I say.
This was funny, and I think I agree with both of your points, and I really like your take on the Docker in it. Of course, like it will not only just generate the Docker file, it will make your application compose ready. But of course, if you just want to open a port or add a service or something like that, or pass some credentials, you don't know like how to do that because you haven't go into the like the roots of that how things that work. So I think 100% agree, like those tools are really good if you have a really good understanding. For sure it will make your life then easier because you have a good understanding of that. And about the Scout, I recently, like 5 or 6 days back, tried to use the Scout. So I'm also writing a blog, like because Docker Scout has a really good GitHub action. So whenever you get a new PR, it will just check application and it builds an image checking in the in the PR compared to your current image, and gives you a comment in that PR itself about the vulnerabilities compared to the image you have, and the image is coming. So yeah, this is a really mind-blowing thing, which I, of course, I will soon publish that blog. And yeah, this is the what to say. We are in the end of the space, and my final question will be: what you are most looking forward in 2024 from the Docker side? Like, what are the new advancement? Of course, we don't need spoilers; those are the confidential thing. But yeah, what are you most looking forward for 2024 from Docker side, and how Docker is shifting? Because of analysis, I think Docker is shifting left. So means like focusing more on the developers, focusing more on the SDLC, software development lifecycle. So what's your take on this, like how going forward in 2024? Sorry, not 2022. So yeah, take away the mic, Francesco.
Yes, sorry, Mohammed. I'm gonna steal a couple of ideas and then I'll let you finish. There are different things, but I think that it will not can like become something different. What I want to see is like more integrations with Docker init. So trying to cover many cool stuff. Probably improve there is a part in the Docker documentation which is basically how to Dockerize a Rust application, and I'll dive deep into that part, like really hard. So I want to see more stuff on that part, and yes, I would like to have the Docker AI like being more lightweight. I think I tried this at 2 months ago, and it was a bit bugged, but I tried this in beta. So I would like that to be not a heavy tool, but something that is usable. Like, I don't know, even a soft form of like a GitHub Copilot. It doesn't even have to be perfect, but like usable. So not like a one-click thing, but like something that you can interact. You can make a couple of basic things, showcasing stuff, and so on. And of course, I would love to see another DockerCon. So maybe I can meet the current captains and also maybe some future ones. That's it for me.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, go ahead, Mohammed. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also like to have another KubeCon. Probably it would be even more interesting for me if it's in Europe, so that we don't have to apply for another visa there. So yeah, so that to meet more people, and then on Docker features, I'm really looking forward to the development of Docker Scout, and also Docker is doing something about signing the images. It started signing the official Docker images with the new technology that I still don't understand quite fully. So yes, that's also something. In general, Docker is moving towards security more and more uh, in last year and in 2024, and that's something that I'm really interested in and excited about. So let's see how that falls out.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Mohammed.